ElectrikJam podcast.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome to the ElectrikJam podcast. I'm Christopher Horton, and I'm here with Richard. If you don't know who we are, check out our website in the description of this podcast. ElectrikJam has guitar reviews, gear testing, tons of info on recording, everything guitar. Richard, how are you today?
I'm good. I have to apologize for last week for my microphone sound. It was terrible. It was because Skype updated and it was using the stock microphone on my computer, so it sounded terrible. But I've got the proper one going now, so hopefully it doesn't sound as bad. And it didn't help either that I had a massive, really bad cold as well. So it's kind of just, awful sound and lots of snot. So not good.
Yeah. I tried to fix it as much as I could in post, but we didn't know what was going on. So we've got everything figured out now. We are not podcasters. We are just starting this out. So we don't really know what we're doing. So we're learning as we go along.
And just ad-libbing as we go.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like we know what we're talking about, but when it comes to the actual putting together the podcasts and everything, it's been a learning journey for me.
It sounds easy. This is the thing. It sounds easy to do, but it's actually quite complicated. And you'd think in like 2024 with all the tech that we have, there'd just be something you could just do. Like we use Skype, which is probably not the best thing to use, but and obviously we're in different countries, which makes it even trickier too, because we're in different time zones. So you're just getting up and having your coffee, and I've been up since 4 a.m. this morning, UK time, because my little boy's decided that he likes getting up at 4 a.m. now. And
so, that's 10 hours away from where I was. Yeah.
So it's just, oh God, I'm telling you, 4 a.m. get up. I mean, I know people like Tom Cruise do it, but Christ, I have no desire to get up at 4 a.m. But I've been doing it for 2 weeks straight now. And I'm once it gets to sort of like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, you're pretty much ready for bed. So, anyway.
Anyway, I don't know if you've watched any of the NAMM coverage, NAMM 2024. There's 2 of them every year, and it's the biggest, music trade show in the world. And usually it's a lot more busy. There's usually every guitar brand known to man there. Maybe 8 or 9 years ago, it used to be the place to make a deal. Like if you wanted to start carrying Schecter or ESP guitars, then you went to NAMM and you talked to the representatives there. But since COVID, people have been doing kind of virtual deals. And so you would be surprised that PRS was not there this year. Schecter was not there this year. The biggest booth was ESP, but that's usually the case. They're almost always the biggest booth. And otherwise it was a bunch of small companies, which I thought was really, really cool. Cream Guitars from I believe they're from Mexico. They had one of the coolest booths I think I've ever seen at NAMM. But otherwise it was kind of weird this year.
Why do you think that is? You think it's because a lot of the guitar brands are now kind of realizing that they could probably get more bang for their buck just doing not traditional, but now traditional kind of forms of advertising online, social media, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, you nailed it. I think it's so much easier to take a bunch of really nice pictures in your studio and then make a post on Instagram and be like, here's our new model. And that reaches more people than the NAMM show stuff. And then you have, your famous YouTubers that go to NAMM and they film everything. And for the people who can't go, that's another thing too. This is the first year where you could just buy in. Like you did not have to be invited, which was strange.
Well, that's not a good party, is it? When you
could just buy in.
You don't need an invite to get in. You're probably not everyone's going to want to be there. Obviously I think this is the thing that's happening a lot more is that, because trade, it's a big investment as well. Like to go to a trade show, if you're a big company, you've got to get logistics, you've got to get a lorry, you've got to load everything up, you've got to drive there, you've got to have people on your stand, you've got to pay some girls to walk around with not many clothes on. There's so many things you've got to do, there's so many costs that come into it. And in my job, I used to go to a lot of trade shows, like tech ones, years ago, like Vegas and Barcelona and stuff. And I think I used to go every year to a few of them every year for about sort of 5 or 6 years straight. And you could see it was kind of like dwindling off as things like social media and stuff were kind of on the uptick, because people were just like, we can reach, say it costs, I don't know, you say Shaq wasn't there.
Right. Yeah.
So say it costs, they figure out it cost them what, $30,000 to do NAMM or something, right?
That's a just be like, good figure. Yeah.
And then they just go, okay, well, why don't we just take that $30,000 and put it somewhere else in some other form of advertising? We could connect with a YouTuber or a site, or buy some advertising space, or buy some magazine articles. There's so much easier ways of doing it. And obviously, because now the kind of walled garden of business has kind of come down, so people can just kind of connect. If you've got a website, someone can connect. If someone wants to sell your stuff, they can get hold of you. You don't have to go and shake hands at a trade show anymore. Which
or
is
the other way around.
I
mean, the other way around works too. I mean, because we have a website, and the other way around, it works that way too. Companies get a hold of us and want us to promote products. So they didn't have to meet us at NAMM or anything like that. They just sent us an email over. But another thing that you mentioned, and it's a really good point, Schecter in particular and PRS, what they're doing instead of going to these trade shows is they're putting guitars in the hands of YouTubers and Instagrammers and people like us, and they're sending out these guitars, and that costs a whole lot less than renting a booth for $5,000, like you said, paying 4 or 5 employees to be there.
Oh God, yeah, it's unreal. I mean, you send a guitar to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of what's that dude with long hair called? Rob, what's his name? He's kind of got a ridiculously sick studio setup. He's always playing licks. Rob, it's really embarrassing. I don't know his name. It's not that embarrassing. I never met him, so I don't know what his name is. He's got like long hair, and he kind of speaks like that. It kind of sounds a bit like Duncan Trussell.
Oh my God, I have no idea who you're talking about.
He's always playing like really kind of expensive Gibsons and Fenders and stuff, but not in a retro kind of way. He's kind of he actually plays it really well, and he's kind of his channel's I think his name's Rob or something. I don't know. It's going to take me ages trying to think of his name, and I can't remember it. So, but yeah, I think he's got a few million subscribers, and like Ola or somebody, someone like that. You give him
Ola England. Yeah, that's a great example. Mm-hmm.
You give that guy a guitar and he does a few videos with it. How many people are going to see that? Way more people than they would do if you went to, relying on footfall through NAMM. And also, it's not, I like guitars, but I've never been to a guitar trade show, and I probably never will. So if you're going to get to me, you have to get me through like a magazine or an advert on its website or YouTube. So yeah, it makes way more sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Schecter and PRS, like I said, they've been pretty adamant about sending stuff out to YouTubers, like Glenn from Spectre Sound Studios. I think he has like 550,000 subscribers, and Schecter just keeps sending him stuff, and he's like, sure, I'll play it on the channel. And he does. And next thing you know, you go to Sweetwater and that model is sold out.
Yeah, so, but it's the way it works.
Working.
That's the way it's worked now. I've worked in publishing and media for like over 10 years now, and I've seen the transition. It's just the way it's gone. You've gone from having actual salesmen working in-house selling adverts on your site and in a magazine, to programmatic ads, to native advertising, which is advertising that you don't know is advertising, and then and now it's influencer marketing and advertising, which is one of the, I would say that's native advertising, but kind of it's apples and oranges really. It's all about semantics, but the idea is if you're playing a guitar that someone's given you from promotional purposes, it's kind of like, do you have to say. And also, this is what I was talking about before. If you say PRS is just sending you guitars every month, and you're like, oh my god, this is amazing. I keep getting sent these insane PRS guitars, and you kind of, it's not said explicitly, but if you say something that's not particularly nice about them or a model they send you, are they going to send you? They're going to probably stop sending you stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's like if you go on a date with you go on a date with a girl and you start, criticizing things about her on like the second or third date, she ain't going to go on a fourth date with you, is she? So it's the same with the companies. You have to play nice, and maybe gloss over a few wrinkles for to keep the sweet stuff coming.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but it's a weird disconnect now. There's something someone's got to figure out how to do it, because stuff's going to get lost in translation, because marketing and journalism and advertising are kind of the lines between them are becoming blurred now, to the point where it's hard to tell. And this happens with me a lot, like with tools I use on like stuff to run the site and my other sites. You read something and like, okay, that sounds great, that's exactly what I was looking for, and you try it and it's just not as good as they said. They haven't gone over any of the downsides, and you're like, well, what about this? It's like they didn't talk about this, and they didn't say this, and it's very hard, because if you're in a relationship with a brand, which you are if you're an affiliate, and you like getting free stuff from them, you're gonna go out of your way not to upset that relationship, because you want to keep getting the free stuff. So it's a weird place to be where we're at the moment, I think.
Yeah, that's why we don't get very much free stuff.
No. No.
Well, we're pretty straight up in our articles. If we like something a lot, then you can tell. But I mean, I've even called out Schecter one time. For, I think it was the Jack Fowler model, which was just a double humbucker version of the Nick Johnston model. And I was like, what a lazy way to do this, And, Schecter wasn't mean to me or anything afterwards, but, I did get an email, because I play Schecter exclusively, if everybody didn't know or don't know me. And I did get an email afterwards, and they're like, I was like, I'm just being honest. You guys use the exact same body, the exact same neck, the exact same trim system, so just changed out the pickups. And Jack Fowler, turns out he's not even in a band anymore, so I think they've kind of dropped him. But yeah, stuff like that is that's just where advertising's going, though. I agree with you. It's become native advertising, like you said.
Well, that
absolutely agree.
With that kind of thing going on in AI, it's really, there's a lot of stuff to be a bit concerned about with, particularly if you like reading online content. I know it's a bit of a dying art, but I'm a reader. I've always been a reader. I like reading stuff. So
me too.
I love watching videos too. I love watching YouTube, but I do like reading stuff. I feel like you can get, with a good writer, you can kind of get more from it than you can from watching a video sometimes. And with stuff like AI and things like that, and this kind of weird line of between people having these special relationships with brands, and there's kind of like back and forth and these like cushy relationships, it's hard to see how things can, without it being, I don't know, it's a real tricky one. It's like a really tricky one. But then you get to the point where you get some sites that are just so big that they kind of have to have this stuff. And the ideal scenario for any kind of like reviewer is to have the size and scale that you can just buy in whatever you need, and then you can be completely impartial about it. That's kind of like the way it should be, I think.
I agree.
Because if you're reviewing stuff, it should be. And there's a really cool tech site called Rtings, and they basically have this really cool system. And the way they do it is they test like TVs and tech and stuff like that, and like laptops and whatnot. But what they do is they buy everything in, and then they have like a little sort of like unit where they test everything. And then once they're done testing it, they would then have like a e-commerce component to their site where you can then buy the product as used from them, which I think is a really cool way of doing it, because cool idea. They get to keep obviously they get to get they don't get completely cover the cost of the product because you can't sell a used product as new, but they can probably offset it. The tax you can probably offset it with tax, and you probably more or less break it even. And then obviously you can be completely impartial, and you're not affiliated with any brands, and there's no allegiance with anybody. So I think that's that's where it needs to go. But then to do that, you've got to be, if you're buying, oh my God, I mean, can you imagine the overhead of trying to buy 60, 70, 80 guitars a year to test them all? There's the manpower you need to have as well. So it's a very tricky place to be. But I mean, that's kind of the only way you can be considered 100% impartial, like legit review site, is if you're not getting stuff and you're buying stuff and everything is done in a scientific kind of manner. But that's a big ask for, even we couldn't do that. For instance, we don't have that kind of resources or manpower to do that. But, you've got like a pretty good connect at your local guitar store, and I can't remember its name, but that local place, you can go in, play the things, borrow them, try them and stuff. And that's kind of close, I guess, to that kind of model, because you're not getting something and you haven't got a PR person going, hey, we'd like to work with you guys, you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours type thing. So yeah, there's ways to do it, but I think the main thing is that I think brands have just realized that they can effectively just, with the rise of kind of like influencer marketing, they're kind of like, well, we can just do this now. It's cheaper than advertising and buying like traditional magazine advertising, because you give a guy who's got 1 million followers on YouTube $1,500 to pimp your guitar for a few videos, send him a free guitar, he's going to do it, isn't he? It's getting off his nose. So just another thing to play. So it's interesting about that. Would kind of, I could see why that something like NAMM would be struggling, particularly because I don't think younger people particularly are going to be the kind of want to go to trade shows. I don't know why, because a lot of them seem to go to all those weird Comic-Con things,
and they're almost the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, literally. Maybe if you let them, maybe if you get dressed up as some stupid superhero and go, people will be like, then maybe they go to it. I don't know, or just roll them together. Maybe just do
dress up like Slash and go to NAMM.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just sort of, yeah. I don't know. There's a large amount of people in their 40s that like to get dressed up and go out. It's strange to me.
I've been to those Comic Cons before, and they're a lot of fun. But yeah, NAMM is kind of a dying thing. And to segue into our next topic, who wasn't at NAMM this year?
Me.
BC Rich wasn't at NAMM this year.
Too busy being evil.
Yeah, so there will be a link in the description for our official article on this subject, but it's kind of made the rounds a little bit, to the point now that I think a lot of the guitar community has really kind of picked up on it. But so basically what happened is there's a boutique builder named Iconic Guitars. And Iconic, over the last, 2 or 3 years, have really picked up. And people have started noticing what they do. And they do vintage-inspired instruments, but they also do kind of modern versions of that. So like if you wanted a 60 Strat that has more modern appointments, you could get that. And it's a really cool idea. Well, any boutique builder like that is doing those kind of numbers with $4,000 or $5,000 guitars, they're doing OEM stuff also. So they're usually doing work for other companies as well, much like ESP makes Schecter guitars in Japan, because they're owned by the same company, but it's kind of an OEM deal that they have going on there, where they make another brand. Fuji Gen Guitars does the same thing for Ibanez, So they took on BC Rich to do those Stranger Things TV show tie-ins, and they were the BC Rich Warlock that Eddie Munson in the TV show plays. He plays Metallica in the TV show, and it's this big epic moment. It's really, really cool. And so they made that exact guitar because the show happens in 1986, and they made a 1986 Warlock. And so the original deal was 400 or so. And Iconic Guitars was like, well, if we're going to do that many, we're going to have a bigger space. We're going to have to get some more employees. And they did all of that. And then BC Rich is like, yep, we're going to do 400. You're going to have to get them out at this time, all of this stuff. So they get the new facility. They've expanded. They have more employees. And all of a sudden, BC Rich pulls all of the funding out. And they cancel all of the purchase orders, all of the work orders. And no money is exchanged past that point. And at this point,
Jesus.
Iconic has built, I think, 350 or 250 guitars for BC Rich that are already in stores. So I think BC Rich has paid for those, but they haven't paid for anything else. So it's kind of a messed up situation. BC Rich basically ghosted Iconic Guitars and said, sorry guys, we don't want it anymore. And Iconic Guitars is holding the bag because they've already bought the materials.
Well,
for all of that.
they're gonna have to let down everybody else or take the hit because they obviously you have to buy in everything.
Yeah, the video is in our article of the owner explaining the situation, and he's been very cool about things. He hasn't badmouthed anybody or anything like that. He told everyone what BC Rich did, but he also said, we're very proud that we made these guitars. They're amazing guitars. Get one if you can, because there won't be any anymore. But yeah, BC Rich just kind of pulled the rug out from underneath a small builder.
That's not cool. And also,
yes.
Why did they decide? Because obviously there's going to be some preliminary kind of talks and discussion. And you'd think there'd be contracts, right? Surely there'd be contracts.
I'm sure there are. But
to me, that sounds like, I don't know, if someone commissions you to do something, some work, whatever, it could be anything. If you have to commit to buying in resources or bringing in additional help, and you have to cover that cost, you want some kind of gap insurance on that, which would mean if it goes tits up, like a lot of deals do, you're covered. So you don't want to be exposed to that kind of heat, particularly if you're a smaller business. Dealing with a bigger one, who will have much better lawyers than you. So you need a well, that's what contract law. That's why it exists, because it's to protect not just big companies, but also the little guys as well when you're dealing with the big guys, because they will try and finagle you for every dime they can. So yeah, it's not good. I mean, it's a really bad image for BC Rich, because now I've been on BC Rich's Instagram, and they've been posting different models that they're still releasing. Apparently, the Korean models that we covered at one point, they're still going to be making those out of World Music Instruments, which is the company that makes ESP and Schecter and all the other Korean high-end guitars. And apparently they're still making those. But I've been looking at the posts, and the comment section is a mess, to the point to where you can tell that they've deleted comments, but they can't keep up, because every time someone posts a new guitar and it's like, hey, check out this BC Rich Mockingbird, the very first comment is like, hey, that's a pretty cool guitar. Did Iconic build it? Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the thing. You can't once something like this happens, you can't get away from it. Like, you can't, particularly on social media, because people just love a controversy. And most of them don't even care if it's true or know anything about it. They just see other people doing it, and then they just join in.
Well, what's weird about it is why hasn't BC Rich fired back at all? Like, at this point, it's been 2 weeks, I think, since Kevin Proctor put up that.
I would say they probably.
You think it's a legal thing? Yeah, because he's taking them to court.
Yeah, and if they're in the wrong, they don't want to say anything that can be used against them. So what's that saying they always say in the films, the American cops, when you're arrested?
Oh, you can plead the fifth?
Yeah, no, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you do say.
Yeah, that's the Fifth Amendment.
Yeah, so they're probably just doing that because they don't want to be saying something that can be, like, say, if it's on social media or it's on a website or it's a quote, it's on personal record, so it can be used, as evidence.
So you know it's bad.
Yeah.
If they're not even saying, like, they haven't even done a public apology, so whatever litigation is being put up against BC Rich is going to be pretty bad. And plus, as far as I know, Bill Xavier owns them now. He bought them in 2019. I think he has ties to Five Finger Death Punch. Is that the name of that band? I'm not sure.
Are they the guys with all the frosted tips and stuff?
It's definitely butt rock. It's not good. Like, I've heard it a few times. It's definitely butt rock. I'm not gonna apologize for that either. Listeners, I'm sorry. If you like Five Finger Death Punch, you quit buying camo shorts and don't put your hair in dreadlocks, please. But yeah, they're definitely they're definitely in that category of butt rock. I put them up there with Nickelback. They do heavy stuff, but, like, it sucks. It's, like, so disingenuous. But
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's awful. Usually I'll apologize. Like, last week when we were talking about the favorite albums, I apologized a couple of times for saying I didn't like things. But when it comes to Five Finger Death Punch, sorry guys. I mean, like, if you could see the hand gestures I'm making right now, you'd be very offended. But
yeah, I've never really heard of them. But looking at them now, they look far too old to be dressed the way they are. That's my personal opinion on it.
They play BC Rich, I believe.
They do a lot of kind of. Well, I've never been a fan of BC Rich guitars. I'm just going to put that out there because I think they're ugly as hell. And it's like most things with life. I don't like. I love metal music. I've always been into metal, but I hate the whole shtick with metal that comes with it. Like, you have to have, like, spiky devil-looking guitars, and it just seems to me it's just like the level of bravado that comes with people that are into metal and think that that's kind of how they have to be. Like, you look like you're in a band, but you work in IT at some corporation. It's just like you can just be normal and like metal. Or not normal, but you know what I mean. Like, I don't know.
You don't have to look like the guys from Meshuggah to play in a metal band.
I mean, to be honest, they look like relatively normal dudes. Like, it's like Dillinger Escape Plan. That's so cool about them when they came out. Just, short hair, black t-shirts, nothing. They're just some frat boys.
Yeah. Or like Baroness. Like, Baroness they play like Fender Telecasters and stuff, but it's heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so I've never. I mean, BC to me is always like it's kind of like the. I was going to use a cheese reference, but I don't know.
Try hard.
I don't know what the cheese situation is in America. If you'd even know what I was talking about.
Try hard, I think, is the word that you're looking for.
It's just they're just horrible looking guitars with all the spiky horns and stuff. To me, it just looks like something that, somebody in, I don't know, Disturbed would use or something, and just just bravado, just nonsense. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that they've done something not very nice like that. But but then they'd be like, "Oh, it's just business, man," and it's like, well, it's not, is it? You don't welch on a deal. If you basically commit, you ask a small company to do something for you, and you say you up the order, and then give them a date, then.
Then you should pull the rug out from underneath them. Yeah.
Yeah. To be honest,
it's wrong.
To be honest, the guy must have had a contract. They couldn't. If he's gone into it without a contract, then that's kind of partly his fault, because you can't.
Definitely.
You can't just assume that everything's going to be all right, because stuff can happen. I mean, look at COVID. Like, when that happened, I mean, how many contracts do you think were cancelled overnight?
Oh yeah, especially in like the construction industry and stuff. I mean, like, all of a sudden
events,
you can't,
events stuff, tours. You're talking. God, it must have been like a great time to be a lawyer, because there's been so many lawsuits going on. Everyone's just doing lawsuits in their underpants at home on Zoom.
No, you're right, but I think that they definitely had a contract, because I don't think that Kevin Proctor would be going for litigation if he didn't.
No,
you know?
no, and they must have, because if they hadn't have done, if there was no contract in place, then I'm sure BC Rich would be all over it on social media, being like, yeah, whatever, we didn't do anything wrong.
Well, yeah, and you wouldn't want to look. I mean, like, he got on YouTube and basically poured his heart out about having to fire these employees that he felt like were family to him.
Yeah.
And I don't think you would get online and post a video like that if you were partly to blame. You know what I mean?
Not unless he's some kind of evil genius.
Right. BC Rich is actually like, what is he talking about? We never did anything.
This is just a major PR stunt. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty messy, but it seems to be that that's kind of the sort of the way things go at the moment with lawsuits. I mean, we covered the Gibson stuff in the previous podcast, where they're just suing the pants off anyone that comes anywhere near them.
They spend more money with lawsuits than they do for R&D, I swear.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's crazy. So, I mean, obviously, by the time this comes out, I mean, there's not going to be anything else been said about this. I reckon BC Rich are just hoping this kind of just gets out of the news cycle, and then they can sort of get on making ugly ass guitars, and hopefully Iconic will, continue to do what they're doing and hopefully come out of it unscathed. You never know. They might. Sometimes these things have like kind of like a nice end to them anyway. So somebody might be watching this, some big, exec at a big guitar brand, and be like, hey, you know what? Let's get them to make our guitars. And then they'll be like, yeah, we just,
what was that accent? That was amazing.
It's my Vince McMahon accent. Oh, I probably shouldn't say that after all the trouble he's in, but that kind of like American power guy.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic, dude. I've tried to get you to do an American accent for like 2.5 years, and you finally just did it.
There you go.
That's amazing.
I'll save it for a special occasion. So you never know. Hopefully something good will come of it. But like I said, on the flip side of this is that they're getting more people are noticing them. Because I'd heard of them, but I didn't realize really what they were doing. And then after this, I've kind of looked into it and been like, whoa, this is really cool. Like, I had no idea these guys were this good. So it's that, in a sense, it's probably, while it sucks that you've been shafted by BC Rich, obviously, there's plenty of publicity going to come out of it. And also, they'll probably make a lot of new friends, both business-wise and in terms of customers going forwards. So I reckon they'll be fine.
I think so too. And like you said, at the very least, they're getting press, and and another company might pick them up, like you were saying. I mean, another American company might be kind of in arrears themselves and be like, hey, you guys want to take over production on some of these models? I could see a company like Fender even approaching them to do OEM work. No, Gibson's going to do it the hard way. They're going to do it the hard way or no way at all.
Yeah, we're doing it in the shop at the bottom of the garden. We've got 5 men with lathes. They're all 380, like proper like Old Testament dudes. I think it'll play out all right, because good brands that do good things tend to do okay. So I think they'll be fine long term. So the segue, there isn't really a segue here. Can't really do it. But
let's move on to
the main topic, which is something I have to be honest, I really don't care about, but it'll be good in a way, because a lot of people do care about it. So I'll be able to be that kind of like, ooh, I don't care. And then you can try and explain to me why I should care. And then at the end, maybe we'll kind of, because you talked about this to me before, and I had no idea this was such a thing. And then I went onto Reddit and realized that it wasn't just a thing. It's literally like Catholicism and Protestantism. It's massive.
So that's how I'm going to present it, actually. So the Tonewood argument. There's 2 camps of people in the Tonewood argument. There are the Tonewood evangelists, who swear that mahogany is darker than maple in tone, and you can't make a guitar out of swamp ash properly because it's too soft of a wood, or there's a million different things that they say. And then you have the Tonewood atheists, right, who think that you could build a guitar out of a piece of plastic and it'll still work. And then there's no one in between. Or if there are, it's kind of like politics. They're the silent majority who don't say anything.
Care.
And see, I'm one of those people. I do care, but I don't care. So I guess I can start this off by saying what Tonewood means to me, and then compare it to what both sides say. So what it means to me, the main thing for me is the weight and the resonance of the guitar. And it doesn't really matter what kind of wood it's made out of. I'm looking at a rack of guitars right now. One is made out of koa, one is made out of mahogany, another mahogany, one is made out of black limba, and
Black limba.
two basswood bodies, and they all have something in common. They're all lightweight and resonant,
Here's a
which
question
matters.
Why didn't they call it basswood or bassfish, but they call it basswood when it's in that context?
I don't know. You guys invented this language.
I don't know either. It's weird, isn't it? But that's why apparently English is really hard to learn, because we have different rules for different words that are exactly the same. So people get really confused about it.
Well, when I was a teenager and I used to get the musician friend catalogs all the time, I would say basswood in my head, because back then there was no YouTube, so I'd never heard
you didn't say
anyone...
bass guitar, do you? I played a bass guitar.
Right,
bass
exactly.
Is also the fish.
You play the fish? What?
Yeah, I do.
I could see where that's very that's complicated. But yeah, that's kind of where I sit. So the first thing that I notice is if the guitar is resonant, it has good sustain, and if it is under 10 pounds, so that way on stage it's not breaking my back. And that's why I look at woods. And that would be one of the only reasons that I look at woods, you know? The other reason would be for aesthetics. And I think a beautiful flame maple AAA top on a Gibson Les Paul looks amazing.
Yeah.
But I also think the veneer that's like a quarter of an inch, you know, it's like a sheet of paper basically that they put over the guitar. I also think a lot of those are pretty too. So that kind of stuff really doesn't matter to me. And the black limba guitar that I have is a one-off thing from Schecter, and it's a very cool guitar, but I don't think that changes the tone of the guitar at all. What I think changes the tone is your amp and your speaker, first and foremost, or your plug-in and your IR. That's where I think tone comes from. After that, maybe pickups.
Yeah, and also your technique as well, I'd say. That's an element to that as well.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, some people pick super hard, like think of James Hetfield, and you can tell, you know, he has high energy picking, you know?
Yeah.
And then
it's like Ben Weinman as well from Dillinger. He's got a real sort of
he's hitting it's very percussive.
Through the strings.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, speaking of Ben Weinman, he played a $600 LTD for most of his career. Yeah. And he didn't care.
He got the custom one, didn't he, towards the end? But
yeah.
But that kind of comes back to what we kind of always been talking about, is just it really doesn't matter like what your gear is. If you need if you think you're getting some kind of validation if you're playing, or you as a person through playing, owning an expensive guitar, you know, it just doesn't make it. It's not going to an average person who's not a professional musician, it's just not going to move the needle. It's not going to make that much of a difference. The flip side of that is if you've been playing guitar for like 20 years and you want to treat yourself and get something good because it's something you're passionate about, something is very important to you, then that's a completely different story. And you can afford it, then go for it. But it's the idea of, you know, like a journeyman guitarist being like, oh, I need to get this or else I might as well not play. It's like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree.
Or if I don't have this wood, then there's no point recording the album because my goddamn guitar's made out of bloody basswood.
It's like, which is what Ibanez uses almost exclusively, by the way. And everyone thinks it's just a cheap wood, but like you buy a Prestige Ibanez for like $2,500, It's probably made out of basswood. So you've got people like me, and that was a very nuanced, very different way of looking at it. So you have people like me, but then you have the evangelists, and a lot of them are luthiers, which is also cool. But that kind of gives them they're like guitar doctors, right? I mean, they build the things for a living, so that kind of gives them a little bit of weight in the argument when they say that mahogany sounds darker than basswood. But the thing is they're right. And when I had a luthier explain to me one time about a Les Paul and how it's made. So it has a mahogany body, which is a darker sounding wood. Then they take the maple and they put the maple cap on top of it. So it's a 2-piece body.
Yeah. And
that maple brightens up the mahogany. Now this is 110% true. But it's on such a small. Yeah, go ahead.
Couldn't this be tested pretty? You could do like a test and just prove this. We've got.
It has.
It has. I was going to say, because if someone's not done this yet, then we should do it.
No. We're totally getting to that.
It's not like a priest trying to get to being like, well, God's real because is that what you would say that, priest? Because it's kind of that's what you do.
But yeah,
sorry.
So that is a real thing. And a lot of the Tonewood argument comes from acoustic guitars, where Tonewood is absolutely 110% a thing.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, totally.
Like if you have a cheap guitar, it's probably laminated wood, and the laminated wood doesn't sound anywhere near as good as a solid top. And different tops sound different. Spruce sounds different than cedar. Yeah. So all of that matters. All of that really matters. But when it comes to electrics, it also kind of matters a little bit. So going back to the Gibson Les Paul, and the mahogany is a darker sounding wood, and the maple cap makes it better.
Yeah.
Or brighter. That's true, but how much of that information, that tonal information, comes through?
Yeah, I mean, to play devil's advocate here, I would, they say beauty lies in the eye of the beholder, and you can probably apply the same concept to sound or tone. So I don't know. I just think at the end of the day, it's like, would a listener be able to tell the difference? Would anyone, if you're listening to, say, a metal album, and they might have used, say it was like Metallica on the new album, they probably used about like a bazillion different guitars, across that album.
Oh yeah.
And can you tell? No, all the guitars sound the same. It sounds exactly the same on every single track. Like that's one of my main problems with that album is just the guitar just sounds exactly the same. Just like digga 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 digga. Like it doesn't change once. And he used about 1 million different ESP models on that album. He did.
Oh yeah.
So
and a couple of Gibsons.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, it's one of those things. I think people just like talking, they like arguing about stuff. But I just think in the grand scheme of things, I really, really love guitars, but this is something for me. I just can't even get into it. I'm just like, I don't care. Like it doesn't make any difference, a jot of difference to me as a player. I'm sure it just doesn't. I just doesn't. It's not. I don't know. I think tone comes from your playing and your, like say, your pickups and what you're plugging into, and I think that's like 99% of it. With an electric, with the acoustic, 100%. That I would definitely. But then they're completely different output modes. Like acoustic is reliant on, the body creates and amplifies the actual tone of the actual sound you hear. That's all you hear.
Right. The top of the guitar actually vibrates, and that's the sound that you hear. Yeah, on an acoustic. So on the other end, we have Tonewood atheists that think that you could build a guitar out of a concrete block and it's still going to sound the same. And yeah, kinda. I mean, because going through all of these newer guitar companies, you have companies like Strandberg, where you have like a 4.5 pound guitar, right? Yeah. And it's headless. So it has like half the wood that a usual 8-pound guitar would have, and they still sound great.
Yeah.
And then you have, Aristides or Aristides,
Did you just say titties?
Well, no, it's funny because it's an inside joke with the company. They say just call us titties if you want, but Aristides,
Okay.
they make it all out of a composite material called arium that
Right.
they made, and it's like carbon fiber and oxygen bubbles.
Right.
And that's the entire guitar. And then you have Buzz Osborne, who works with the Electrical Guitar Company.
Yeah, it's like an aluminium guitar, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's aluminum all the way down, and then it's wood on the sides. So all of those guitars sound amazing. So I don't.
Yeah, I was gonna say because I've seen the Melvins a bunch of times, and I've seen him with playing his Les Paul, and I've seen him playing the electrical guitar company one, and I could not tell a difference. They sound.
No.
In fact, I'd say the electrical guitar company model had more clarity. Like I could hear it better, but that could just be to do with the mix and them having a better backline. I don't know.
Yeah, it could have been a venue. Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah, so
you have the atheists that believe that. And then there's people in the middle, like me, where, like I said, it's a nuanced discussion. And if it matters how it rings out when it's unplugged to you, then that's cool. Then yeah, start looking for those tone woods that you like. But it doesn't really factor into your tone. Now, the way a guitar is built, this is the most important part. A well-built guitar will sustain really well. It will be very clear. It'll sound good unplugged. It'll sound really good plugged in. However you want to do it, if it's really well built. And Tonewood really doesn't factor into that either.
No.
So, I mean, you've got these new PRSs, right? You got the PRS SE models. The most popular one this past year was the DGT. And that's for David Grissom. David Grissom himself couldn't tell the difference between his USA model and his $1,000 SE model. Blindfolded. Like he couldn't tell the difference.
Oh God. Okay. Well, this happens a lot though with everything. Like in the UK, there's a really famous thing about I think it was Cliff Richard and Gordon Ramsay basically had some kind of soiree or whatever you want to call it, and Cliff Richard was there. And Cliff Richard it might not be Cliff Richard. I'm just remembering it as him for some reason, but I'm pretty sure it was. And he has his own wine label. So, and they're quite expensive. And I think his most expensive bottle is like 600 quid or something.
Right.
And Gordon Ramsay, trying to be like the anti-snob, was like made him do a blindfold test with basically Cliff Richard's expensive bottle of wine, just a bottle of plonk from the supermarket that was like a £5, and then like sort of a 50, 60 quid bottle of wine. And he was like, which one's yours? And he couldn't tell. And then he forced him to pick one, and he picked one, and it was the 50 quid. It was the supermarket bottle. And he was just like, well, there you go then. He's like, why's your 600 quid? And he was like, well, yeah, you need to see the wine to understand it. And he was like, bollocks, and all that kind of stuff. But it does happen. I think that's the thing. I think that's one of the biggest secrets of, capitalism is that brands have somehow figured out to get people to pay way more money for stuff than they're actually worth. And they kind of make up these little stories, which is marketing, to get people to do it.
Yep.
Because I know, like, I'm not saying that expensive guitars are bad or custom shop guitars are bad and that they're not worth their money, but it's the perception that people have of them is often probably loftier than what they actually are, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I played, I had 2 USA PRS guitars for about 3 years, about 10 years ago. And that's all I had. And I toured and gigged with that. And I didn't need anything else. They were super reliable. They were amazing. They sounded consistent every single night.
Yeah.
They were great guitars. So the thing is you were talking about testing, and we're gonna go back to Glenn from Spectre Sound Studios. He has tested this several different times because so many people bombard his channel with, that's not where tone comes from. That's not where tone comes from. And so he finally said, you know what, we're gonna do this.
He's from Brooklyn.
He's actually Canadian, but he's a really angry dude. But he was like, you know what, we're going to do this. We're going to do this scientifically with the scientific method, and we're going to figure it out. So the first thing he did was a blind test on humbucking pickups with metal amounts of gain on them, right?
Yeah.
And he did like 10 guitars. And one was $300 and one was $3,000. And he was like, you tell me which one's which.
Mm-hmm.
And no one got it right. And so then everybody was like, well, that's because it has so much gain on it. And he's like, well, that's exactly the point. When you put that much gain on a guitar, the pickups don't matter. The woods certainly don't matter. Nothing matters about the guitar except does it stay in tune and does it play well? So his next test, he was like, you know what? We'll do it clean humbuckers, right? One was a $5,000 Gibson. One was a $300 Harley Benton.
Right.
And the number one picked tone out of all of them was the Harley Benton.
No way. Yeah. They are good guitars. They are very good guitars. And they don't cost much money, which kind of exactly comes back to what I was just saying. It's getting people to pay more money than they need to for things because they think they are better, but it's the degree by which they're better isn't. It's almost like wages.
It's the law of diminishing
inflation. It's just there used to be like the disconnect between inflation and the wages. Wasn't that much? You could buy a house, you could earn $15,000 a year, and you could buy a house for $30,000 a year. And now you can earn, I don't know, what's the main average wage in the States? Like $50,000 a year? 60?
Not even close. Our minimum wage is $7.25 an hour.
Okay, well, I mean, like the sort of the median sort of like wage.
The median is about
everyone.
Probably 35 to 45,000.
Okay, and how much is the average cost of a house?
Right now, somewhere around $400,000, probably.
So there you go. That's a massive gap. So that's what I'm saying. It's like
huge.
That's kind of the analogy I'm kind of create with this is saying the gap between say like a Harley Benton, which costs 180 quid, and a guitar that costs $15,000. The difference isn't. There is a difference, but I don't think it's that much money. If that makes sense.
Well, yeah, that's the law of diminishing returns. And let's say you have a $600 guitar, right? And then a $1,200 guitar. Is the $1,200 guitar twice as good as the $600 guitar? No. Is it probably
even be as good as your $600 guitar? It depends what brand it is.
Right.
That's the thing with guitars.
But it might be 30% better, right?
Yeah.
But once you get to around the $2,000 point nowadays. Excuse me. Once you get to the $2,000 point nowadays, after that, it's the law of diminishing returns all the way down because a $4,000 guitar isn't going to be twice as good as a $2,000 guitar. And I don't know why people think that, but a lot of people are still in that mindset. But yeah, getting back to the wood argument, I respect builders like Paul Reed Smith who believes in this kind of thing. And he's kind of a Tonewood evangelist, And the most ridiculous thing he's ever said, though, is the thing that he said recently about the tuning keys on the new guitar, how they can increase the mid-range frequency of the guitar or something like that. No, It's not. Okay.
But he wouldn't have said that surely without having something to back it up.
Well, I mean, technically, it's a more resonant.
You must have some anecdotal evidence because I mean, everything affects everything on a product. It's like with a car, you change one component.
Absolutely.
And a little bit more drag, but obviously you're not talking about drag with guitars. You're talking about something else. But I suppose I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But this is what I mean. This is like
it's no
like this,
perceptible difference, though.
yeah.
Maybe it does. Maybe it increases the mid range by 5% on an unplugged electrical guitar.
Yeah, your dog's gonna love it. Is the only one who can bloody hear it.
Right. Exactly.
The dog can tell the difference, but I can't.
So, but there are things to look at in the Tonewood argument. That you definitely do want quality wood. Like if it's a wood that you've never heard of, or if it's a cheaper grade of wood, that's going to matter because everything is screwed into that wood, from your bridge to your pick guard to the neck of the guitar on a bolt-on guitar to the tuning keys. All of that stuff is screwed into that wood. So it matters if it's been properly dried and it's been cured and all of those different types of things. All of that kind of stuff matters, but not to the premium that some people are willing to pay.
Yeah.
So
I would say it kind of goes without saying that if you're making guitars for a living, there's sort of the sub 100 guitars are where you're going to run into problems with that kind of stuff. Like it's going to be like, you can basically stick your finger and it's like doughy wood. But once you get over a certain level, you're dealing with a certain brand, like known brands like Ibanez, Fender, ESP, Gibbs. The wood's going to be good. It's not going to be, the degree to which people get angry about it, it's kind of not. It sort of becomes like a moot issue at that point, I think.
Well, so Glenn did all of those tests, and they were really good. And he also did one on tubes for amplifiers because people said changing different brands of tubes matters also, and it turns out it doesn't. But the best test on the entire internet, I think it has like 10,000 billion views at this point, is a guy named Jim Lill, Lill. And he did an experiment where he took the guitar completely down to nothing. So he started with his Fender Telecaster, and then he took the neck off, and then he took the body off, and then it ended up being just the bridge of the Telecaster being strung between two tables, and then tuned up and strummed. And the frequencies were all the same. The sound was pretty much all the same. And he's done this with speakers. He's done this with amplifiers because he wants to know himself, because he's always heard, you can't make a Telecaster out of mahogany. It won't be twangy enough. And he's like, well, why not? And so he figured it out. And if you break down the guitar to nothing but the bridge, the pickups, and the strings, it still sounds the same. Even Jack White did it at the beginning of that movie where it's him and Jimmy Page and The Edge.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he built a guitar with, scrap stuff in his garage and played it, and it sounded awesome. So what I've always been saying about this is there's nuance to this. There's nuance to talking about this. Yes, the wood matters, but it doesn't matter as much as, say, the evangelist side would say. It's not going to change your entire experience. It's just not, And if you can tell blindfolded, then you're some kind of savant, and you can hear frequencies that the human ear aren't supposed to be able to hear. But at the same time, you can't be that person that says the materials don't matter at all, because they do.
No, totally. But that's almost like, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I don't think it needs to be that far. I think you just nailed it. I think it's the idea that what would be good is if you get somebody that, like you say, is an evangelist and actually tested them to see if they could tell, because that's the only way to do it. Because talk is cheap. Anyone could say anything and be like, yeah, I know the difference. It's like, do you really? And it happens all the time. People think they know the difference, but then they go to Thailand and they find out differently. So it's it's one of those things. And people, like I said, people like to argue as well. That's like the big one. So
well, and I was going to say,
and also another thing people have this when they bought something and they paid a lot of money for it. they kind of feel obligated to like justify their purchase. So if somebody says something that's kind of like a slant on their thing, they're like, no, it's not. And then then it becomes, you're getting into kind of like territorial kind of mudslinging with other people, being like, oh, yeah, I've got a Gibson. If you got like a Gibson Les Paul and you throw it, someone says that, Fender's Strat sounds better, it's better wood, and then they're like, no, it's not. And then it's just, it happens in every kind of like product industry. And because now people are on the internet, they can argue about the things they've purchased, which is really weird to me. But
Android or Apple.
So that's what I was that's kind of what I had in my mind, because I've kind of worked in the tech industry for years, and the level of stuff, that the anger and the vitriol that people have for consumer electronics when I first started, I was genuinely like shocked. I was like, this isn't real, because it was just a job. I just took it. And I remember I wrote on the first week I was working this job, I've written this article, and I was a bit green behind the ears when I was doing it, but I didn't really say anything that was, anything that was objectionable or false. And some guy emailed me on my work email, basically calling me every single name under the sun for saying something about a phone that he liked. And I was like, what? So I just basically opened my email and just basically told him to F off in the email. And then, obviously, being an idiot, it was through my work email. So he then called the publishing house that I worked at, and I got dragged into HR and told I shouldn't be telling our readers to F off and stuff like that. But I genuinely said to him, I was like, I can't believe he could be that angry about it. It's like I'd literally just gone around to his house and like bitch slapped his mother or something. It was a phone. It's like, what planet do you live on? Like, I mean, Christ, if you need any more proof you live in a simulation, then look at that. It's unreal.
Well, I mean, without getting too esoteric with this, I mean, it seems like critical thinking on the internet is pretty much out the window. And when you get down to the lowest common denominator type things like Reddit or 4chan or, where these arguments take place, I mean, these people think in extremes, and that's just the way that they think. And that's not a healthy way to be.
So it's flat, prove me wrong. It's like, come on.
Exactly.
That's the new one now. I keep seeing people out in the wild who, because that's the internet. It's fine when it's localized on the internet. It's just like, you can just say, they're not real. It's just the internet. But I bumped into a few people in the last sort of 2 years that will genuinely like lean in, at a party and be like, "Have you ever watched anything about the flat Earth?" And I'm just like, "Oh God, you're one of those people." I was like, I liked you as well for a bit. I was like, it's like.
I thought we were getting on, yeah.
Yeah, now you're telling me that the Earth's flat and there's,
Well, I mean, yeah, it's the same thing with the Tonewood stuff, and it's
Tonewood's a flat earthers.
It is. It's very much the same thing, because just like the flat earthers,
prove me wrong. And it's like, oh God,
did you watch
time or the inclination?
Did you watch that documentary on Netflix?
Beyond the Curve.
Yeah, where they prove at the end.
Right at the end.
They prove at the end that the Earth is curved with their own experiment. And I think people with the Tonewood debate, and one of the most common things, kind of like the flat earthers say, well, why can't I see New York from New Jersey? How is that possible? Well,
Because
first of all, you're not very far away.
Yeah. And also your eyes can't see that far. It's so.
Yeah.
It's even like I get like people saying like, oh yeah, but it looks flat. It's like, yeah, it does, but it's massive. It's like if you could see forever, which you can't. For instance, if you go to somewhere like Belgium or Holland, it's very flat. Like there's no hills. It's completely flat.
Or Florida. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see really far, but because of the I can't remember what the effect is called, but he just disappears off into the horizon. It's like
the Doppler effect.
Yeah, it just goes. And people can't seem to get their head around the fact that your brain is programmed in a way through your sensory organs to process reality in a certain way that's beneficial to you as a human being. So you don't hear everything. and you don't see everything. That's why if you do like magic mushrooms, you see other things because your brain is operating in a different way than it's used to. So you're seeing more stuff that you don't usually see. Dogs can hear more than other people. That's why I said that, the only difference between the guitar tone that anyone's going to notice is your dog's going to notice the difference, but nobody else is. So, yeah.
Well, one of the things that they say is, well, I have two of the exact same model guitar. Why do they sound different?
Because they were produced in a factory, or they could be handmade, or it could be differences in weight, microscopic differences in weight. It could be anything. It could be you dropped one of them, or you dinked it and it doesn't sound right, or it could be the neck is like a billionth of a millimeter shorter. You just don't know.
Exactly. They could be two serial numbers that are right next to each other. They could have been made the exact same day. That's not from the exact same piece of wood. That's not from the exact same person that probably assembled it, Yeah. And like I said,
everything's different as well. Every single, even when it's made. I mean, this happens with like silicon chips and stuff. They have ones that they have the same fabrication process for every single one, and they're doing it on such an insanely small, like it's 3 nanometers now they're down to, which is like Google. If you listen to this, Google 3 nanometers and see how small it is, and that's how big the chips are that they're built. You're putting in iPhones now, and even with that level of finesse and intricacy, they still make errors. So one isn't identical to the last one, so they have to get rid of it. And these are like the most advanced technology on the planet, more or less, right now, and they still have these nuances in individual units. So you're making a guitar out of wood. There's going to be massive differences,
which is already it's already an imperfect platform to start with, because no two pieces of wood are the same, not even from the same tree.
Exactly.
So even if you made two guitars, from the
It's
exact same tree, they're going to sound different.
Could be from higher up the tree or lower down the tree, or a beaver could have peed on it and made the wood a bit different. You just don't know. It's like there's so many different like variables that can affect, particularly when you're talking about something like wood, which one, it's porous material anyway. So the weather could affect it. There could be, the one could have been in a storm, the other one could have stayed dry. There's so much stuff, and like that's why things sound different.
But once you run it through a buffered pedal board, and then into the back of your amp, and then amplified through the amplifier, whether it's tube or solid state or whatever you want to use, or your modeler, it doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be very subtle differences. Some pickups are hotter, so they get distorted quicker.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's going to be very, very much the same across the board. And like I said, Glenn proved that in his video. And he said, of course, there's a difference between, humbuckers and single coils. They're going to sound completely different because they're completely different types of pickups. One's going to definitely be thinner, but all humbuckers are pretty much going to sound the same. So, I mean, his case is don't go out and put $300 pickups and a $500 guitar thinking that you're going to make it sound like $1,000 guitar, because it's not. That's not the way it works.
Just learn to play it better. That would be my advice.
Yeah. While you're sitting there scrolling through the thousands of pickups that you could possibly put into it, you could be playing your guitar.
Yeah, just get better. Just get better, and then it's cheaper than spending 2,000 quid on a guitar, and and then you can pick up anything and be really good on it. That's, I just think like from some of probably the best music that's ever been recorded, this was probably never even something that factored into their minds of the people doing it. They weren't just like, well, what if we use this one for the Tonewood? What is this going to make, Dark Side of the Moon sound better or dark? No one cares. It's just like, it's a Strat. I like Strats. Strats sound good. Or it's a Telecaster because Telecasters sound good. Or I want something like, I like Les Paul because it's got that bit more bassier sort of sound to it. But yeah, I just think it's almost like something to talk about when you've got nothing else to talk about. So, I mean, there's so much other interesting stuff going on with music and the culture within music, and even the business aspects of music that you could get into more, and then kind of talking about that kind of stuff. It's very, I don't know, it smacks of boomerism if I'm quite honest. It really does. Do you know? Like, it's like,
No, it does. You're
like,
you're
kids don't
100%
know
right.
about guitars these days. They don't know nothing. It's like I can afford. What's that thing they do on Guitar Circle Jerk all the time? They're always like ripping on dentists or lawyers posting like
Oh yeah,
pictures of
lawyer
their like,
guitars. I can
yeah,
afford 12 PRSs every month because
yeah,
I'm a lawyer and a dentist at the
yeah,
same
and I've got,
time.
yeah, exactly.
No, it's absolutely true. I mean, the main takeaway when it comes down to Tonewood, play your guitar more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Get
think you have much more
get
of a.
better.
People will notice the difference more if you're actually good than the wood you're playing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
And
the
another
quickest way to
thing,
sound better on guitar is to get better at playing with guitar and not worry about what kind of wood you're using.
if you want a better sound, then go for the amp or go for your pedals or go for, your plug-in because that's where the sound is going to come from. I mean, you can plug a cheap guitar up to a really expensive amp and it's going to sound really, really good. You can plug a $5,000 PRS into a little 10-watt practice amp and it's going to sound awful. So
Hmm.
that's an unmistakable truth right there. But yeah, that's the end of the Tonewood debate for me.
Yeah,
Is
no, I mean, I think we've covered
play your
everything.
guitar.
Yeah, we've covered
Just play
everything. I
it.
think, and
Play
I
it
feel
more.
like I feel like I know more about it now than I did going in, but I don't care anymore than I did going in, if that makes sense.
I figured you were going to be like that because I
Yeah,
mean, I kind of am too. I mean, like if it's a really pretty top on a guitar, then yes, that's attractive. But I don't know.
I think I'm a bit too
Some
just. I think I'm just a bit too.
substance over style.
Yeah, I think I'm just a bit too trusting. I just kind of trust if I'm paying a lot of money for guitar, it's going to be like, it's going to be good. It's going to be good wood. I don't really, you know,
Well, if you're buying
just,
from a name brand, then yeah, you're right.
yeah. So that's kind of my take on it. But as for next week, what's on the agenda? I think also think we're trying to do a couple of things, and the first one is obviously if you have questions and stuff, we have two ways of kind of contacting us other than the site, and one would be to join the ElectrikJam subreddit on Reddit, and it's not spelled properly because when I bought the domain, I couldn't buy electric spelled correctly, so I had to spell it differently. So it's spelled ElectrikJam. So it's kind of like ElectrikJam, but it looks kind
Yeah,
of cool in
it'll
a
be
way.
in the comments. It'll be in the
Yeah,
description of this video. A direct link to our subreddit, actually. So you can just
yeah.
click on the description in this video, and it'll take you right there.
And there's not many people on there at the moment because it's obviously we've only just kind of started pushing it really. So if you have any questions or you just want to come and say hello, that's a good place to get both of us because we're both in there or on Reddit most of the time. So if you drop something in there or ask to join, we'll be able to, field any questions you've got or anything like that. In terms of the site, we're going to be doing a big update on the aesthetics and look of the site in the next week or so. So that's going to be like a big change. And then we'll be launching our new email series as well, which is going to be we're going to house like most of our video content going forward. So it'll be Chris showing you how to do things, going through like recording tricks and tips and guitar tips and stuff like that. And we've got some really kind of exciting stuff coming in the pipeline in with kind of little mini courses on getting up to speed with different genres and stuff that Chris is working on at the moment. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff coming down the pipeline. So yeah, and if you listen to the podcast and you kind of like what we're doing, then by all means drop by the site, sign up on the email, or come to the Reddit. You'll be able to get all roads will lead to the email, and you'll be able to get on there and access the courses and stuff when they become available. So yeah, Chris, you got anything to add before we go?
Yeah, we'll talk about next week. Next week, I wanted to explore what makes a song great, and not in the way that Rick Beato does it. We're
I
gonna
was going
do
to
it in
say,
kind of yeah.
Rick lawyers are going to be knocking on the door.
No, we're gonna do it in kind of our own way. But what makes a song really really good?
I have a lot of opinions about this. This is going to be good.
Oh, I do too. And we're gonna cover everything from metal to like folk rock. But there's a commonality in all of these things in every genre. And it doesn't matter what kind of genre it is that
Is it the
makes
tone
the
wood?
song Good. No, it's definitely not the Tonewood from the guitar.
Ah.
It might not even have a guitar in it, you know. But there's a commonality in every really great song. Songs that stand the test of time. Songs that are hundreds of years old. Songs that are only decades years old. You know. We're gonna look at what makes a songwriter really great. And I think that would be interesting because I've definitely got a list, and I'm sure you have a really good list.
Yeah, I have some really strong opinions on this as well. Just with things like contemporary bands as well. So bands that start out that you used to really love, and then as they've kind of stuck around, they just gradually get worse and worse and worse. I have some theories about that. And because it's very rare, I can't think of a band other than probably off the top of my head, like Meshuggah, who's been around for like more than 20 years and is still pumping out music that's better than when they started.
I can think of a couple.
I'm really struggling to think of more because I know it's because when I listen to bands that I really love, I tend to, it's always the kind of earlier first half of their career rather than the second half. But we'll get to that next week and we'll cover it all in detail then.
Absolutely. So, we will see you all next week. Thank you for listening, and check out all the links in the description and send us a message or leave us a comment, whatever you want to do. And we'll talk to you next week.
See you later.